Welcome back to the Against All Odds, the Less Than 1% Chance podcast with your host, Maria Ponte, where we will hear stories of incredible people thriving against all odds. And my hope is that we can all see how life is always happening for us, even when we are the less than 1% chance. Hey, welcome back to Against All Odds, the Less Than 1% Chance podcast with your host, Maria Aponte. I am so very excited for this conversation today. I think that it will not only help you all, it will definitely help me and my children. So I'm really excited to talk to today's guest. Her name is Maddie Andrews. She is a mental health advocate, master social work student, peer support specialist, and nonprofit founder who brings both professional insight and lived experience to her work. After surviving a significant childhood trauma and being diagnosed with a serious mental illness, Maddie spent years simply trying to get through each day. Then in 2023, she faced a life-threatening crisis that left her having to relearn basic functions from the ground up. That moment became a turning point in her healing journey. Now, Maddie dedicates her life not only to her own recovery, but to creating healing spaces for others. Through her advocacy, peer support work, and nonprofit leadership, she's helping reshape how we understand mental health, resilience, and what it means to rebuild a life with purpose. So please welcome Maddie Andrews. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
joining us.
much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So give us a little bit of insight. What is your against all odds story? And again, open to all of it.
My story is super long and super complicated. It really all started when I was 4. So before I was 4, I was a great sleeper, not too attached, just your typical kid. But then when I was 4 years old in preschool, I was actually sexually assaulted. And I told my teacher, and she said, "This is your fault. If you tell your parents, you're going to be in a whole lot of trouble. And you're not to tell a soul." And when you're 4 and this person you
Oh my
idolize is
gosh.
telling you that, you tend to clam up.
Yeah.
So I developed this over attachment to adults. I stopped sleeping and I really began to develop significant anxiety at the age of 4. And
Yeah.
that was really where it all started. By the time I got to middle school, I started developing things like psychosis, which means I had delusions, paranoia, hallucinations. And I also, my moods started to really bend and sway. I would have the really high highs, the really low lows. And that's where the beginning of my serious mental illness began.
Was the teacher the person that sexually assaulted you?
No, it was
Oh,
a older child. So a
got it.
preschool teacher's son got off the bus and did it. My only adult rationale behind her saying that to me is because it was on her watch and she didn't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
So my parents actually, before they died, like I tried to tell my mom at one point, but she wasn't receptive. So my parents really never knew. I kind of carried that with me until I was about 35 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so you started experiencing these things in middle school. What came
Yeah.
from that?
I really began to shut down. When I hallucinate and have paranoia and delusions, it's very negative. They tell me things like people don't like me, people don't want to be in the room with you. Hallucinations are very scary. And when your mood is fluctuating within that, it's hard to manage the day to day. And I had gotten really good at a young age of what I say is wearing a mask in public. So I learned how to hide these things, but it was so draining. But by the time I got home, I had nothing left to give and little self-control. So when I was
Yeah.
at home, one minute I was screaming at my mom, the next I was crying, the next I was isolating, and it created a bad habit for me as an adult of hiding the smaller symptoms until they escalate into a crisis.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That kind of gets me all emotional because my oldest daughter has dealt with her mental health issues since about 6, almost 7 years old. I think that the situation that kind of started it all was when her dad and I separated. My ex-husband and I separated, and it was super hard for her to process that he didn't live with us anymore, that, all of that. And so I started taking her to counseling, and then it became kind of more family counseling and so forth. But it was so difficult. So the first like diagnosis was like ADHD, and let's get her on ADHD medication. And so I was a single mom of these three kids that my 7-year-old was struggling, and I was like, well, I don't know what else to do. Let's try the medication. And so I got her on medication. It helped a little bit with like school and stuff like that. And then I don't remember exactly what happened, but they upped her dose and it wasn't really then working, and she was still having really tough time at home. And I was just like at a loss of I just don't know what to do. And it's not something that at that time, she's now 21, nobody wanted to talk about mental health. And it's only been in the last few years that it has been, I think since like COVID time period, since it's really been kind of more common to talk about. But I was dealing with this since, early 2000s, around like 2010, 12, around there. And so it was just like I don't know what to do. I've never had to deal with this. And so I tried to do anything and everything to help her. I started to go, there was a organization called Federation of Families, and that helped, families and children that were dealing with mental health and so forth. And so we would go once a week to their meetings, and the kids would join, and then there would be a part where the parents would just learn different ways of dealing with the things that were happening. And then we had like a child advocate. Like I tried anytime anyone was like, have you done this? And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that existed. Let's go. Because it was so draining, not only for her and for me, but then my younger two kids, I feel like I neglected so much because the attention was so much on my oldest. And I remember she would have all out fights, and she would tell me that she would see, people that were dead, and that they would tell her to do bad things. And so when you don't know, you're like, this is scary. What is happening? And she would get really physical with me. There was a time she like pulled my hair out, just things that I was like, oh my gosh. And as this is all happening, the two younger ones were watching, crying. And so it was just a very just humbling and difficult experience as a family. And so, thank you for saying what you did, because I felt like I was going crazy. I was like, I don't know what else to do. And who am I going to tell that she's having hallucinations about, people that are dead and how they've died and that they look scary, and like I don't know what to do. And so I felt very isolated and very like, well, who can I actually tell? So thank you for saying that, because it kind of makes me feel like, oh my gosh, you know, we weren't the only ones. We weren't alone.
I resonate with your story so much. And I want
Yeah.
to first say thank you. Thank you for being that mom who's going to put her daughter first, even though it's so difficult. I had a mom like that too, and I wouldn't be the person I am today without my parents. Nobody's perfect. We all have our flaws.
No.
But when you have a mom who's not going to give up on you, even when you're beating her down, that's what matters. And that early intervention you gave your daughter. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. I
Yeah.
didn't expect to start crying already.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
cry too. I wish I could tell my own mom that. I wish
Yeah.
I could. My parents didn't live to see the end game diagnosis in me. They were gone. My end game diagnosis is what's called schizoaffective bipolar type, which means I have symptoms of both schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, along with generalized anxiety, OCD, and PTSD. And I didn't start articulating any of these things until I was 14, and they just diagnosed me with the OCD. But little did anybody know, I thought people lived in my bushes, my events. Like I was putting my
Yeah.
parents through the ringer. And
Yeah.
when I started to get help at 19, I remember the internet wasn't quite what it is today. So my mom went to the library and checked out every single book on bipolar disorder she could and took me to a specialist and this and that. And simultaneously, like, I know they wanted to give up sometimes. My mom told me that, but they didn't. And they taught me that I'm bigger than a diagnosis. They
Yeah.
taught me that, first of all, I'm Maddie, and that's a unique thing to be, and I can do anything I want. And I carry that with me as an adult, and it drives me to work harder and prove the world wrong. And that's one reason I talk about these things is to show that people with mental illness can do anything they want and to let people know they're not alone. So, you did all
Oh
the
my
right things.
gosh. It's
You got it.
ugh, it's like it was my fear
Yeah.
always. Oh my gosh. That like damn, I know that I'm not perfect and that it was so hard, but I tried always. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. She's
Like
gonna appreciate that.
goodness. Yeah,
My
that
parents
definitely.
didn't get to see me in recovery. They saw me struggling in my 20s, saw me barely living life,
Yeah.
saw me wishing for death, saw me psychotic, saw me manic, and I know now they can see me happy and in
Yeah.
recovery, and I just hope they know how thankful I am for them
Yeah.
to get me here. And your daughter's going to be, I don't know what her state is today. And
She's
yeah,
and honestly, so she hasn't been on any medication for a long time, but it was more because when she was 18, because so they diagnosed her with bipolar disorder at like 12. I don't know if that's necessarily what it is because I don't know. I'm not sure because we went through trials, we tried so many different kinds of medication, and when she turned 18, she was like, I don't want to do medication anymore. It makes me feel a certain way. I don't want to do it. I and so she chose to get off of them. And she still has her episodes of like she says that her schizophrenic episodes, and this is something that she like has I don't know if you call it self-diagnosed, but she's like, this is what I'm feeling. And she knows to look for to reach out. So when she just broke up with her boyfriend, but she knew that she had that connection with somebody. She would either call me or call him or whatever. And so I've always like when she's in those moments, I number one tell her, "Okay, baby, I need you to breathe. Like let's regulate your breath." And then the second thing when she's like super anxious and whatever, I'll tell her, okay, because it's usually over the phone. I'm like, all right, let's look for explain to me three different things that you can see right now. What do they look like? What do they smell like? What do like describe three different things because I need you to come back to the present because I know that like when you're depressed you're focusing so much on the past. When you're anxious it's so much on the future that hasn't happened. So like that moment of getting present in the moment is where I try to get her back to, and she'll be like, I see a blue truck. Okay, what does a blue truck look like? Is it an old truck? Is it a new truck? What color are the rims? Like does it have any other stickers on it? I try to get as much descriptions from what she tells me as I possibly can so that she can kind of get her brain working in a way that it's not focusing on whatever she's anxious about.
that's a coping skill that a lot of therapists have taught me as well, the grounding techniques. So the
Yeah.
breathing, things like box breathing, and then they call it the 5 4 3 2 1 technique, which is
Mhm.
exactly what you're doing. Tell me five things you can see, four things you can feel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's a really great way to get you out of that panic, out of that anxiety, and bring you back down into the present.
Yeah. I've learned this for myself and I just have again, I decided that like So when she was that how old was she? She was 11 or yeah, she was 11 when I found out that I had cervical cancer and I was super unhealthy and she was just getting diagnosed with bipolar disorder and so I was in a place where I was like, all right, I need to either put my oxygen mask on first and take care of me, or these kids will not have me. She will not have me, and who's like, no one's gonna take care of her like I am. And so I was like, what am I going to do? So I focused on getting healthy. I started to work out and eat right and listen to personal development and look for different things that I could do to get myself in a better state. I started to meditate myself so that in the mornings, because the mornings were always the hardest, in the mornings, I would normally wake her up and it would like if I had to wake her up at 7, I would wake her up and hey, I need you to get up. You need to go to school. And she would like, start the fighting immediately. And I realized that when I started to meditate and really ground myself, my energy going into waking her up was so different. And I understood that I fed into her moods so much because I was going in with like that anxious energy of like, oh my gosh, what is today going to look like? Because it always looked different. And so I remember when I started to do that, and I was like, oh, that's shifting. Okay. And then I realized through lots of therapy, we realized that she needs to feel in control. So instead of waking her up at 7, I would wake her up at 6:45. And I would say, after I meditate, after I ground myself, hey, baby, good morning. It's time to wake up. And she would be like, ugh. And I would tell her, do you want 15 more minutes or do you want to wake up now? She's like, no, 15 minutes. And so when I would go back in there at 7, where she normally has to wake up, she then would wake up and because it was in her control, she controlled that. And so even if it's a false sense of control, because I was still waking her up at the same time, it was trying to go around what we were experiencing because I was like, I don't know what else to do. I cannot like physically deal with getting myself better, being there for the kids, and dealing with these like really tough mornings because it would then trickle into the rest of the day. So, yeah. Thank you for saying that because it always felt like, okay, am I not doing enough to
Yeah.
to get there?
I think my mom felt the same way a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But it'll all be worth it.
It just gives me hope to see that you are where you are, having gone through a lot of what she went through, and it I didn't even think it was going to hit me this much, but it's something that like I'm so proud of her right now. She's 21 and about 3 months from turning 22, and she's living currently she was living with an ex-fiance and now like she didn't come back home. She was like, no, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna keep working. I'm gonna find a roommate. And so she did that all on her own and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud because I didn't think that that was gonna be the case. I was like, is she going to be able to live with somebody else? And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hope in this, and that's one reason I do what I do. I call myself overly transparent.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I was actually grappling with this today. I was like, because somebody at my internship for school found out about my story. I mean, it's pretty public. It's bound to happen, but I panicked and I got really paranoid. I'm like, am I doing the wrong thing by being so transparent? Am I putting myself in a bad situation? But when I hear things like this, and when people reach out to me and I can provide that little snippet of hope because when you're in the thick of it, it's like you're in a dark tunnel and you don't see the light. But, I'm living proof that recovery is real. We can live any kind of life we want to live. Diagnosis or no diagnosis, whatever that diagnosis is, I would say that when you're dealing with things like bipolar and schizophrenia, the 20s are difficult. The 20s are
Yeah.
going to be difficult. I say I wasted my 20s, but really it wasn't a waste when I think about it. It was finding myself, finding the resources I needed. I just so happened to need medication the rest of my life. And it took me from 19 to 35 to find the right cocktail. That's just how it
Yeah.
worked out for me because most of them I couldn't, they didn't work for me.
Yeah.
But I had to learn along the way it's bigger than a pill, right?
Yeah.
It's the whole scope of life, coping skills, adequate sleep, sunlight, exercise, you name it in life, you have to think 3 steps ahead when you live with mental illness. And
Yeah.
you have to keep a routine. So it takes a lot of effort and it takes a long time to understand that and put it into place. So, you
Oh my
know,
gosh.
if you live with mental illness or your loved one is affected by mental illness, hope is very alive, recovery is very real. Be patient with us.
Yeah.
We are trying. I guarantee you we
Yeah.
are trying.
Yeah. So, can you explain to us exactly what psychoaffective is?
Yeah. So I live with the diagnosis. It was originally bipolar, like your daughter. When I was 19, I was hospitalized. They were trying to understand, do I have schizophrenia or do I have bipolar disorder? And for most of my 20s, I was just diagnosed bipolar disorder, but I had mania, I had depression, but then I had periods where I had psychosis without mania or depression. And they needed to see a pattern of this. And when they established a pattern, they diagnosed me with schizoaffective bipolar type. And what that means is I have symptoms of both schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Now, when you have just bipolar disorder, you can have psychosis, but it's generally linked to mania or depression. Like they combine. But
Got
when
it.
you have schizoaffective, you have mania, psychosis, and depression all by themselves. So you're not necessarily in a state of mania or depression while you're hallucinating, having paranoia and delusions.
Got
And
it.
it is considered serious mental illness. And it is a new, like a lot of people don't know that word. I say it and they're
Yeah.
like, and the
What's
first time I
that? Like,
heard, yeah, the first time I heard it, I was like, whoa, what is, what does that even mean? I was afraid of the word schizo. I didn't like it. It took a lot of processing on my end, a lot of grieving to come to terms with it. I dealt with a lot of guilt and shame around it, but today I'm proud of it.
yeah.
I- It makes me who I am. I'm unique. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. You absolutely are. So, okay. I think that this is something again that I kind of, as she was growing up, I was very worried about. Is love possible with mental illness, relationships? Like how do you
yeah,
deal with all of that?
that's a tricky one. When I was in my 20s, I dated and I hid a lot of my diagnosis. And then I met who is my now husband. We have been together for 11 years.
Oh,
And I didn't tell him until he saw a scar on my leg because I used to self harm a lot.
yeah.
And he said, "What is that?" And I was immediately afraid and full of shame. But I told him, and he said, he grabbed my hand and he looked me in my eyes and he said, "Maddie, don't ever do that again. We're going to make sure you never do that again." And I started to open up to him. And our marriage has been difficult because I have had a lot of crisis, but he's never given up on me. I mean, at one point in our marriage, he was my 24/7 caretaker. He was changing my diapers, like if we're being real about it, when I
Yeah.
was dying. And he was working a full-time job, taking care of me, dealing with my moods, dealing with my psychosis, and he never gave up on me. And honestly, the other day I looked him in the eye and I said, "Why do you do it?" Because I'm just confused because I put him through a lot. And he said, "Maddie, I love you." And I was like, "But really? Because this is a lot. Like, I lean on you so much." And he said, "Maddie, love can't be explained." He was like, "You're my best friend. I would do anything for you. I know you would do anything for me. And my life wouldn't be the same without you." And I think our trials and tribulations have made us so strong.
Yeah.
If we can get through what we've been through the last 11 years, we'll be fine forever. And
Yeah.
as much as he's had my back, I've had his. He's
Yeah.
had down points too. So love is very possible with mental illness. It's all about finding the right person. There's a difference between going on a first date and disclosing and waiting till an appropriate time. And there's also a difference from hiding it too long.
Yeah.
You want to make sure it's someone who can support you empathetically and realistically. So you got to find that right time that's right for you to
Yeah.
disclose and educate them about yourself and your needs, your I feel, I need statements, and communicate with them. I used to think my husband was a mind reader, and he's not. He's
Well,
not. So now,
no husband or boyfriend or man is a mind reader.
no, so now I am quick. Hey, babe, I feel, I need, how can we get through this together? And we have a great partnership today.
I love that so much. So you you mentioned that you were dying.
I
Please
was.
explain what happened.
Yeah. So like I said, I was heavily reliant on medication, and I was on like a ton of meds in 2023, and they called about a new one. They're like, "Oh, just try it." And I was like, "Whatever." And I wasn't processing emotions. I was numb to the world. I was unmotivated. I was 420 pounds. My hair was falling out. My thyroid didn't work. I mean, it was terrible. But when they called me and I tried this new medication, suddenly I was feeling happy and sad and crying, and I didn't have flat affect anymore. I had emotion in my face. I was motivated. So they started tinkering with everything else. And like I said, I have schizoaffective bipolar type. So you have to treat mania, depression, and psychosis. Well, they took me off the medicine that would treat my mania, and I became extremely manic and entered a
Wow.
severe psychotic state. And I was bedbound, basically. I had to go out of work and go on short term disability. My husband was my caretaker. And they ended up a few months later increasing my medication called lithium. Now,
Mm-hmm.
lithium is a heavy metal used to treat bipolar disorder. It's very common with mania.
Yeah.
And they added a new heavy dose of it. I had been on it for like 15 years. But the problem is when you take lithium, you have to get blood work because it is a heavy metal. And she did not. And pretty quickly there, I lost the ability to walk, talk, swallow. I was in diapers. I couldn't use a cell phone. I couldn't read or write. And nobody knew what was happening. And my husband would put me on video call with her, drooling. And she would just say, "Rest, I'll see you in 2 weeks."
Oh
My
my
husband did,
gosh.
yeah, my husband didn't know what to do. It was terrifying for him. It was very traumatic for him, and we didn't have a lot of outside support. So it was kind of just us against the world. And then one day he put me in his truck for therapy, and the therapist called and she's like, "You missed your appointment. Are you okay?" And I was only seeing life in the form of hallucinations at this point. So I didn't know where I was. I thought I was in the desert, and I knew something was wrong. I was seeing these white specks of light. My skin was crawling. I was vomiting. And I gathered enough strength and I said, "Take me to the hospital." Not quite like that, but I said it. And we went to the mental hospital where they quickly discovered this was out of their scope, where I was rushed to the ER, and it was found that I had extreme lithium toxicity, serotonin syndrome, and an acute metabolic, I can't pronounce the last word, AME. I had a brain injury. And I was
Oh
very
my
combative
gosh.
at this point. So I was restrained and pulling out catheters, pulling out IVs. And I remember the nurse coming in and she said, "Maddie, if you don't comply, you're going to die. You're dying."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so they gave me a lot of fluids. That's the first course of action for poison, but it wasn't working. And unfortunately, it enlarged my heart. And when your heart's enlarging and failing, it flushes into your lungs. So the bottom half of both my lungs collapsed. And
Oh my,
the lithium was sort of coming out, but not fast enough. And they kept doing CT scans and EEGs on my head. They were doing EKGs around the clock. And then poison control decided for dialysis. So I ended up with 2 rounds of dialysis, but the problem now was I wasn't responsive. I couldn't, I was on a liquid diet, restrained to a bed for 2 weeks until I woke up. I have amnesia. I had no short-term memory. I didn't know why I was there. and they transferred me to the mental hospital, and I couldn't walk very well. I couldn't talk very well. It was, and I remember they gave me pen and paper, and I was like, I'm going to teach myself how to write my name. So when I was there, I taught myself how to write my name, and you can't have a cell phone there. And they wrote down cell phone numbers for me, and I practiced reading and inputting into the landline, reading and inputting. And when I learned how to dial a phone, I got on the phone and I practiced talking. And all in all, it was a hard recovery. When I came home, I still didn't know what had happened to me, but I thought I was dying because my
Yeah.
body had been through so much. It was 3 weeks in the hospital. And when I did learn to read again and have the strength, I read my medical records, and this fire burned in my belly. And I was like, I spent my 20s wanting to die, and here I am cheating death.
Yeah.
Like, what
Ooh,
does
I
this
got goosebumps.
mean? Yeah. And so I got up for 30 seconds and walked to heal my heart and my lungs. And when I could, I got on the phone and I begged for a new team of doctors. I begged for resources. I researched, and I made an Astra. They told me it would be years. They thought it would be silent syndrome at first, and I would need to be in assisted living. Then they were talking a year's recovery, but I was back at work full time 3 months after coming home. Yeah, and I formed my nonprofit 4 months after coming home. It's miraculous. It's a miracle. It took a lot of determination and resiliency, but when you put your mind to something, you can do anything.
Yeah, absolute. Oh my gosh. That
Yeah,
is incredible, Maddie.
thank you.
Wow. I wow. It's crazy what can happen when we're not careful with, I mean, medication is so, I asked all the questions,
Yeah.
and I was so nervous. She had, when we were doing the trial, it was like, oh, you can either get a placebo or you get like the actual medication. And I was like, oh my gosh, this kid is like, I don't know how this is gonna go, because if she's not on medication, like this is gonna be rough. And so it was definitely difficult. And it was a medication, I don't even remember the name for it now, but it was medication that was typically used for seizures that was going to be used for her bipolar disorder.
That's pretty common with bipolar meds.
Yeah. So, and I was like, I mean, again, this was years, years ago, like 10-ish years ago. So it, I asked as many questions as I possibly could. It did help, and she stayed on the medication. And that was another thing, like, okay, how does she stay on this medication post a trial, because it's still not FDA approved for this particular situation. So how does that work? It's so tricky when you are getting the correct cocktail, or how to get to the correct cocktail, because it's so much trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, like, I was responsible for my child, and I'm like, people would call me crazy for even attempting it. And I'm like, you guys don't understand. This is so difficult. This isn't something that, because her dad was like, why is she on medication and so forth. And I'm like, because Ninja, you are not here all the time. And when I call you when she's like having her fits and crying, you're like, she won't talk to me, have her call me when she stops crying. And I'm like, at that point I got it. I don't know what to tell you. At that point I've already handled the situation. So it was a lot of criticism from everybody. Everyone had their opinion, and I had to kind of like stay very like zoned into, okay, I'm just doing what's best for my child. I'm asking all the questions. I'm making sure that it's something that is gonna help her, and that's it. But that's super scary to even think that, they didn't check for, because blood work was super important when we were doing everything. And she was afraid of needles, and she would combat people, and there was a situation when we had to do like a 4 hour testing in the hospital, and she kicked the nurse, and like it was so exhausting.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
it was so exhausting. I remember I did that the day that I found out I had cancer again. So that 2015 I had cancer twice. They did surgery, removed the cells, and then I like later that year I found out I had cancer again. But that was the same day that we did that 4 hour testing that took 6 hours. And it was also the same day that I had gotten into a fender bender because somebody hit the back of my car, and I found out that I had cancer. And I was just like, this day is just, it was one thing after the next. But, it was, I always understood that she, blood work was super important, that she couldn't just come off of a medication, that it had to be tapered off. It was just so many things that you had to take into consideration. I cannot believe that your doctor didn't do those things. That's scary.
I had that same doctor for about 15 years, and her methodology was let's put you on this drug maxed out. Oh, you have a side effect? Let's put you on this drug. And it was just like feeding me pills. And I was so young and so sick, I didn't know how to advocate for myself.
Yeah,
And that was a lesson I had to learn the hard way. And by the time I was 30, I didn't have parents anymore. And I was navigating this on my own. And my husband knew some, but he wasn't really directly involved with my doctor visits. I was an adult.
yeah,
So I have learned to put my foot down about my care, to ask questions, to research, and speak for myself. Like, I respect that doctors have a degree and they know what they're talking about, but this is my body and my life. Like, it's gonna be a lifelong battle with me and doctors. Like,
yeah,
I feel like I'm battling my doctor now because she's new and doesn't really know my story and is giving me a lot of pushback about how I want my care to be. But that's okay because I know what I'm capable of. I know what I need to get there, and she can respect it, or I can find a new doctor.
yeah, absolutely. And I love that. One of the things that I still think about, because my daughter has a hard time even calling a doctor, or she doesn't, her now ex-boyfriend would be the one that would call doctors and make appointments, and like I've taken her again, she's an adult in her 20s, and I would take her to like the gynecologist,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
she would, they would ask her a question and she would look at me like, are you going to answer? And I'm like, girl, you need to learn how to talk
yeah.
and speak up for yourself. And I tried to encourage that, also understanding that like when she is stubborn about putting her foot down, I would rather just say it rather than her walking out of the room.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of learn how to look at her mood and be like, I could push her a little more today," or "Today's not the day."
I think it's great you're doing that. I was solo for a lot of my doctor's visits in my 20s, and I was that patient that was like, "Oh, you think this? Oh, I'm fine then. Oh,
Okay.
okay." Like, I believed in doctors too much. I was overly
Yeah,
compliant, and but we all have to learn, we're not born knowing how to navigate these things.
absolutely. Yeah, I agree. So, how have you been able to maybe overcome some of the traumas that you've been through?
Definitely. Well, I do have PTSD. That started when I was 4. And I can't say that I'm magically cured at all. Like, do I have flashbacks? Yeah. Are they triggered because of my other mental health needs? Yes. I have this deep-rooted fear of being in trouble because of what happened to me. But to help with that, I try mindfulness, I meditate, I exercise, I attend therapy a lot. I communicate with my support network. And I try to live in the present in a positive manner. Like, yes, this happened, but I can't go back and change that. I
Yeah.
can't go forward and do anything else either. But if I can live positively in the present, then maybe I can make this very moment better so that the next one and the next one and the next one are even better. And I think it's a balancing act. There's certain therapies out there for trauma like EMDR, but I'm not a good
Candidly.
candidate for that because of my schizoaffective. It can trigger psychosis for me. So it's a lot of self-talk. It's a lot of distraction, reframing in my mind. I enjoy DBT therapy, learning skills to kind of combat that. And then it's always okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Like, there's just going to be moments where I don't feel okay, and that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. What is DBT therapy?
Yeah, dialectic behavioral therapy I like it because they teach a lot of like concreteness. It's typically used for diagnoses like borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder. There's like manuals for it. They have a lot of like groups that go with it. Like, so you'll do individual and group, but cognitive behavioral therapy is like thought, behavior, action. That didn't really work for me because I can't always trace those things.
Yeah.
So DBT is like, yes, you're having this, and here's an exact thing you can do in that moment. It's just
Yeah.
the style of therapy that I really enjoy. There's other kinds, but I find it to be very useful.
Yeah. And I think that's like wonderful tools to put in your toolbox.
Yes,
Of
say it again, toolbox.
toolbox. I have learned that I have my own tools that I need to put in my toolbox. And
Yes,
what may have not worked in that moment doesn't mean that it will never work. It just, there is, I don't know, as crazy as it sounds, I would not change a moment of what I've experienced with anything in my life
yes,
because it has all brought me to who I am today, what I've learned. I would not be the same person. I would not have the same type of empathy. I would not be as compassionate. I would not have the same kind of love for myself and others if I wouldn't have gone through the things that I went through. And yeah, those tools have become, again, one of the things with my daughter when I started to wake her up early, that was a tool in my
yes,
toolbox. That
yes.
was like, oh, okay, this might be a better idea so that we can start our day in a positive note. And she did do some self-harm as well, but she was a lot of negative self-talk. And when she had moments, there would be exterior talk that would kind of chip away at that because I needed it for myself. When they were younger, that I would take them to school, we would start our day with what we called the wonderfuls. And so each of them, all three of them, would say three times, something wonderful will happen to me today, and repeat that three times. And then they would say, I am one thing that they were grateful for. So let's focus on gratitude. And it couldn't be the same thing you said yesterday and the day before. Give me something different because it helped look for different things in their life that they were grateful for. And then the third thing was I need three I am statements. So I am brave, I am smart, I am beautiful. Like something that is positive self-talk. And so before they got out of my car to go to school, we would start our wonderfuls. And so each of them would go through the things that they needed to say before school.
I
And
feel
then
like we're kindred spirits. Like
I
everything you're
ser
saying, I do too. Like the
I
first
love
thing
it.
I do when I wake up is set a positive intention for the day. When I
Yeah.
journal, I write gratitude lists. I put stickies of self-love in my house. And, as far as a toolbox, back in the day, I had a tangible toolbox. When I learned a skill, I got an item that represented that skill. And when I was in crisis,
Oh,
I could go pick it up. And today at my desk, when I learned a new DBT skill, I print it out and put it on my wall.
I
Like
love
it's
it.
it's so important, but
Yeah.
I think kindness and positivity can really take you far in life. And Like you said, I don't regret a moment of my life. Has it been
Yeah.
hard? Absolutely. But
Yeah.
would I change any of it? Absolutely not. Because I wouldn't be sitting here today doing what I do, enjoying life, living life, helping others if I
Yeah.
hadn't been through what I had been through.
Yeah, I agree. And that gives me so much hope because Isabel, my daughter, my oldest, from the get-go, she has had the biggest heart for others that I could possibly imagine. And I knew that either she at some point was going to work with children or with old people because she was just so super like caring. She had that aura of, I see a baby and I'm like, come here, give me the baby because I need some babies in my life. And she has that kind of same aura. So I think from 18 to like 21 ish, she was a preschool teacher. And I'm like,
Awesome.
perfect. I knew it. Like, I knew that this is good. And at some point, I feel like she's going to work with old people. Like, she's just such a caring soul in her own head in moments, that those moments don't define her. Her true authentic soul is just so sweet and so caring and so kind, and she wants to make sure that everyone is okay, but you don't necessarily see that when she's in a crisis moment.
Yes. I used to be a special education teacher, and I think what you're saying is true for a lot of us who
Yeah,
live with this. We're our own worst enemy in our head, and it
yeah,
comes out one way, but our heart and our soul is so loving. And what we need the most is for the world to show us that love.
yeah,
Because I'm telling you, when we're in crisis like this, we are so negative with ourselves that we don't need it from the outside world at all. And we don't know what someone else is going through. We don't know that self talk in our heads. We don't know how bad we feel. So, that kindness, that empathy, it's not just about creating a better moment. It can really be about saving a life for somebody.
yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, Maddie, we are kindred spirits. I always say people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And there's definitely something big that I feel connected with you. Um,
Yeah.
I love that. So I know that there's probably many, but what limiting belief or roadblock did you have to overcome to get to where you are right now?
I had to let go of the guilt and shame. There's a lot of stigma related to mental illness, and I thought I had it to hide from the world. Like when I was a teacher, for example, I didn't disclose to anybody, and I was suffering so much personally. I was wearing that mask a little too much. And not to say that I need to go to work and say, hey, I'm Maddie with schizoaffective, but there's something to be said about when you don't feel well and you can express that in a
Yeah.
healthy way. And finding my community and my safe space where I can be me and relinquish that guilt and relinquish that shame and be proud of who I am, regardless of a diagnosis, allowed me to blossom. It allowed me to be who I'm truly meant to be. And sometimes I get backlash for it or I get criticism, but you know what? That's just who I am. And I see these lecture videos at school of these doctors and lawyers who happen to live with these diagnoses and they're praised and I think they're amazing and they give me hope. So why can't I be that person too? So I try to take all that hate or sometimes ignorance online with a grain of salt
Hmm.
because I'm just me. And why can I go and say I have a cold, I need help, but I
Yeah.
can't say I'm having a bad day with my mental health and I need help? Like that
Yeah.
question truly, truly perplexes me. And I was
Agreed.
like, I had somebody told me, well, this is supposed to be private, but why? I didn't choose this. It chose
Yeah.
me. So why do I have to hide it like it's something to be ashamed of? I can't understand that part.
Yeah, I agree. If someone says I have cancer,
Yes,
you don't look at them like you should be ashamed of yourself.
exactly.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And again, I think that we're heading in a direction where I have never imagined hearing oh, I need a mental health day, where I never imagined a world that that would be a more common phrase than than it is right now. So I am hopeful that we are heading in a direction where that will be better, where it's not a secret, it's not something to be ashamed about. I hope that for you, for my daughter, for anybody dealing with any kind of mental health. I've dealt with depression after my sexual assault. I was sexually assaulted at 16 and didn't say anything, kept it to myself until I was 19. But in that time frame, I became an adult and I went at 18 for my first well woman checkup, and he had given me HPV that caused cancer. And my first pap smear, they told me, Maria, you have cervical cancer. And I was like, what? And so, 18, 19, and then again twice at 32. So I dealt with depression because I feel like when we carry dis-ease in the body, it creates disease. And so when I started to be able to speak up and talk about it and say the things that I needed to say and be open, that has allowed my spirit to feel free and to feel like I don't have to live with this secret of being ashamed, of feeling guilty. I don't have to live with that. I can live so open and so free, and that should be enough.
Well, if we're looking at statistics, 1 in 5 Americans will have a diagnosable mental illness.
Hmm.
It doesn't discriminate. You may not have
Mm-mm.
it now, but it can happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Anxiety is the most commonly diagnosed mental illness. We all have anxiety. That's a natural human emotion. But when it becomes interfering with your day-to-day life is when it's diagnosed. And we're all one step away from something traumatic happening that puts us over the edge. And if it's not you, it could be someone you love, a
Hmm.
neighbor. We Mental health is invisible. We don't know what other people are going through. So I find that a lot of people who don't want to talk about mental health maybe haven't had it impact their lives, but that doesn't mean it can't.
Yeah.
So just be kind about it all. It's
Yeah.
free to be kind.
Yeah, it's so free to be kind. I agree. Oh my gosh, I've loved this so much. So, give me kind of your daily habits or rituals that help you on a daily basis.
Yeah. Number one is I always practice good sleep hygiene and give myself enough time to relax, enough time to get at least 8 hours, and enough time to gather myself in the morning with my cup of coffee. I carry out a strict routine at bedtime. I carry out a strict routine in the morning. I don't always get the same sleep patterns with my work schedule. I work like 80 to 100 hours a week, so it's kind of crazy.
What do you do?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in school full time. I have practicum with school. Today was my last day for the semester. I get a break.
Yeah,
I run the nonprofit part time. I run
got
support
it.
groups for the nonprofit, and I work full time as a peer support at an inpatient crisis unit Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh
So,
my
and I
gosh.
love it. Like you were talking about volunteer work and service work, like it keeps me healthy. I don't look at any of this as work,
Yeah.
but I'm getting sidetracked. I limit my caffeine. I don't eat sugar. I exercise. I journal. I communicate how I'm feeling. I take my medicine. I attend therapy. I drink a lot of water. I do a lot of breathing exercises. And I try to stay in the moment. That's a general day to day. And when I don't feel well or I feel a symptom coming on, the best thing I can do is speak up early before it becomes a crisis. And maybe it's nothing and it'll pass, or maybe I need a med adjustment or a coping skill, but it's about that self recognition of mind, body, and soul. How am I doing today? What do I need? What can I put into myself today to help the world?
I love it so much. So much. I could not be more grateful right now for this conversation.
Him too.
Oh my gosh. It definitely took a turn that I was not expecting. it was not on my bingo card to cry, but I love emotions, so I'm all about it. And thank you so much. It gave me so much hope. And I could probably 100% guarantee you that my kids don't listen to my podcast. However, this particular one, I'm going to make sure that my daughter listens to, and my other two kids, because I feel like they need to also understand what maybe we went through as a family.
Yeah.
And it just definitely was difficult for them, but I want them to understand. And I've seen a change in their relationship in such a positive way. I love the fact that they will call each other now. Before, that was just not the case. My daughter Isabel, she would not allow me to hug her, touch her, anything. The moment that she left my house, she turned 18, graduated, and left 2 days after she graduated to live with a boyfriend, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know if you're ready for this. I was nervous in so many different levels because I know that physically she was 18 years old, mentally she wasn't there yet. And for me, like, I had not taught her all the things that I wanted to teach her, and because she would not be able to process it. And with that being said, I'm so proud of her now because she owned that decision. Again, she's now 21, about to be 22, and they just broke up. So it was 4 years of basically her living on her own and learning how to pay bills and do all those things that I didn't get a chance to teach her to do because we weren't there. So after she left my house, the mom, can you come over? I need a hug. I was like, where do I meet you? Where am I meeting you for this hug? Because it was many, many years of, I knew that her love language was physical touch. However, she wouldn't allow me to physically touch her. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? Did I do something wrong? And my own self-doubt would come through. And I would see her like hug her teachers and hug everybody else. And then I'm like, okay, but I can't touch you. Okay, it's fine. Because my love language is physical touch as well. And so it was really, really hard for so long. And then when she started to call me and she's like, I just need a hug. And I'm like, as soon as I can get my keys and go, I'm there. And I saw this change in her that maybe she just needed that time away so that she could love and appreciate
Yes.
what the our unit had. And so for so long, her siblings and her, it was always like this rift. They felt like she got a lot of the attention. She didn't understand why that was the case. She was very like physical with them. They were very physical with her. Like, it was just tough. And so now that I see them, and my son went and picked her up and took her to her old place and got a bunch of stuff from there. And I'm like, see, I always told you guys that siblings are like the best friends that you will forever have. And so it's just been awesome to see that evolve. And yeah, I'm gonna make sure that my kids listen to this episode.
In full transparency, it gave you hope, but it made me feel better too.
Oh,
I had some negative feelings and maybe some symptoms this morning about being so transparent because somebody found my story and I was a little worried about that. Like, obviously, anybody can find
yeah.
it, but I called my friend and I was like, I think I'm doing the wrong thing here. Like, maybe I need to scrub the internet and start all over. And I was feeling kind of paranoid about it, but hearing you say it gives you hope and hearing a story that's similar to mine and knowing that we're in this together, it made me feel a lot better too. So thank you.
Oh, yay. This was like the best surprise ever. I'm so incredibly grateful. And yes, keep speaking up. I think that, again, we felt so alone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say we because it wasn't just me, it was the kids, it was her, it was myself. Like, we felt so alone. And that is a really hard place to be in. And you are seeing this now, even with the struggles that you continue to have, you're seeing it from a different perspective. So it does give so much hope to anybody that's dealing with it and feels alone.
I felt alone most of my life. It took me until 35 years old to find one person with a diagnosis like mine who could relate to me. And
Yeah.
when I did, I was like, why can't I meet more people? And that's the basis of the nonprofit, right? Is
Yeah.
building communities for people like me. So I think it's special when you can find someone you can relate to.
Yeah. Where are you based out of?
North Carolina.
Okay. All right. Just if I'm ever in the area, I want to hug you.
Yeah, hit me up.
Well, I will put all of your information in the show notes for listeners. Maddie, thank you so very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you for
I
having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so incredibly appreciative of this conversation. Listeners, again, I always say I hope you got as much as from this conversation as I did, but I truly, from the bottom of my heart, I could say that I got so much from this conversation. So thank you, and I hope you did as well. As always, peace out, guys. Love your life. Bye.